They wouldn't call anybody connected to it. They wouldn't call all the witnesses that were on the news saying they saw feds at McVeigh planting gray sticks of butter. They wouldn't call Terrence Yakey and the other police that showed up minutes into it. They wouldn't call, I mean, the governor said they were there and saw bombs removed. I mean, we have all these newscasts. They're in the film A Noble Lie. And he was trying to ask these questions, and he went to the judge, and the judge just said, you're off of this, you're gone, even though grand jurors are supposed to be running things, not the other way around. And then the FBI keep coming to his house and, you know, opening their shirts up and showing him a firearm stuck in the, you know, the waistband, threatening him. And then helicopters flying around in his house, you know, multiple times a week, threats. And then he was told, don't file your lawsuit against us or you're going to end up dead. All will be forgiven. And then another gentleman did and ended up dead. Now, remember, Cop of the Year got killed. Other people got killed. I've talked, and we're going to try to get them on the show, police officers who've been threatened. Colonel Craig Roberts has talked about this, who was also a Tulsa police officer, Tulsa detective who they sent out there. Separately, an Army lieutenant colonel, and before that, famous Marine Corps sniper who wrote a bunch of best-selling books on sniping. The point is, all of this went on. They even tried to set up Colonel Roberts a couple of times for all sorts of things, and we're investigating him for terrorism because he dared talk about this. Now, years after he's off the Tulsa police force, they come to him and apologize. But that's all a side issue. Craig Roberts, a lot of great characters up there in Oklahoma. Marine Corps sniper, colonel in the Army, Tulsa Police Department SWAT team leader, helicopter pilot. In fact, one time the helicopter broke down over Tulsa, and he'll tell you the whole story of being an inch and a half shorter after the crash from his spine compressing. But side issue, going back to Hoppy Heidelberg, all this is going on. Bring us up to how were you given the message, you were saying shadowy figures, not FBI threatening you with guns now, that you're going to be dead if you file a lawsuit on us. Tell us what the lawsuit was going to concern. I know we've talked about it over the years, but my memory's even foggy on this, Hoppy. And then, you know, more about the helicopters, what they look like, and then Mr. Wilburn and what happened to him.
Well, lost my train of thought. Ask me a question.
That was a lot of questions. Well, I mean,
start me with one.
Let's get into the shadowy figures.
Okay, this guy he didn't have on a coat and tie. He had on Levi's and boots, but he was obviously not a cowboy. Turned out he was an attorney. I did a little homework later and found out who he was. He was an Oklahoma City attorney. And he was trying to pretend to be my friend and my associate and be a cowboy and all of that. But his approach, much lighter, much softer, no threats exactly, but his approach was way more serious than the guys that were trying to be bad. So I knew pretty much where the message was coming from. It didn't concern me because I didn't know, and I still don't know, that I had a lawsuit. Lawsuit for what? Sue the judge for kicking me off the jury? I don't know that that's not his. He didn't have the authority to do that. I don't know. What was the point of suing them? I wasn't going to sue, so I ignored it. It didn't bother me. I wasn't worried about it. And the helicopter thing didn't start till sometimes later. Before we finish, I want to do 2 points that come from General Parton. I don't have to do them right now, but there's 2 very important
I'm going to write that down, 2 points on Parton, and we can also... 2 points
on Parton, yeah.
I'm going to write that down, but continuing with the threats, because that's evidence of the criminality, but specifically, was it like, I'm your friend, but you're not going to live if you go with this lawsuit, everything will be forgiven, because you said that earlier.
Well, he didn't. No, he was smooth. This guy was not. He knew how to work it. He was good. That's why he was sent. He was good. He was matter of fact. He was not threatening. He has a very nice, friendly tone of voice.
But that's what made it so creepy.
Exactly. I knew exactly that this man was for real. He wasn't sent there to blow smoke or anything like that. He was just going to tell me exactly how it was going to be. And if I didn't like it, okay. It didn't really bother me. He was a nice guy. His threat was empty, not because they wouldn't do it. It was empty because I had no interest in filing a lawsuit, because I didn't have anything in mind. I mean, what was my damages?
Well, there was some type of suit they were concerned about, and we could talk about that later. Now, particularly with the helicopters, what did they look like? Unmarked?
Well, yeah, they were unmarked. I've heard all the stories about the black helicopters and everything, and I will admit that up high against a blue sky, they were so dark they looked black. But they got down so low, right in my yard, right around my house, that they were a very dark green is what they were. They weren't really black. There are black helicopters, but mine were a very dark green helicopter.
Yeah, so that's FEMA or an auxiliary of it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, but I could look not directly, I mean, but they didn't get down so low they was going to crash, but I looked right at the pilots, you know. We had eye contact every time, and I don't know, they may have come when I wasn't there a time or two and I didn't come out. I don't know that, but I know that all the times that I came out, they circled till I came out, and then once I waved them off, they went on. Always three of them. Always came from the same direction, always left in the same direction. So,
now, specifically, though, tell us about the gentleman and who he was who did file a lawsuit.
Oh, Glenn Wilburn was an accountant here in Oklahoma City, and he lost 2 grandchildren in the daycare center. And he's pretty sharp. He was pretty sharp. He figured out right quick that this was all bogus. That, you know, nothing that government said could hold water. There was something wrong with it. So he went to investigating, and he eventually got his daughter, who had standing, because it was her children that were killed, got his daughter to file a lawsuit against Tim McVeigh. This is kind of odd, but what it did, it gave him the opportunity to pursue documents that they didn't want to give up, nor did they want to say we don't want to give up. So it had the potential of being a problem, and therefore they knew that the girl would not pursue the lawsuit if they got rid of her dad. And so when they got rid of Glenn, why the lawsuit went away.
And then he went away, too.
And then he went away first, and then the lawsuit went away.
How did he go away? I forget.
Cancer, pancreatic cancer.
That was one of the worst ways to pass away. Glenn passed on, I believe, a day or two after the McVeigh trial. The federal trial verdict was read. And Charles has an incredible story of how Glenn just literally couldn't stand up straight and was crying in Charles's arms. This is, I believe, a few days before he passed on, and wanted Charles to continue on because Glenn knew deep down inside that whoever murdered his grandkids were getting away literally with cold-blooded murder, and he didn't want that to happen.
And they do, it's declassified, have those fast-acting cancers. That's now been declassified. And there's been a lot of other deaths. What about Terrence Yakey?
Well, Terrence Yakey, as we said last Friday, he had passed on a year and 3 weeks after the bombing. It was on May 8, 1996. It was on a Tuesday. And he actually had he was 30 years and 6 months old, just a few days shy of that. As you know, his death was horrible. He had gone out to retrieve some records at a storage locker. Coincidentally enough, he'd shared with Dr. Charles Chumley, who passed away in a very suspicious plane accident in the fall of 1995. That's a whole other story for another time. We don't want to take up your radio show.
No, we can tell that, or you can tell it tonight. Yeah, he was helping investigate, too.
Yes. In fact, Dr. Chumley was Terry's back doctor. I mean, like you said many times, Alex, you couldn't make this up. The people that cross paths, we're talking about 1 or 2 degrees of separation with all of the key players in this investigation, not 6 or 7 degrees. They were just 1 or 2 removed from knowing each other. I talked to Dr. Chumley's son about 3 years ago. He would not talk to me in person, talked a few times on the phone, asked me not to call him back. He said he appreciated what we were doing on the film, but he didn't feel comfortable with pursuing any other information. That's how scared they had his son.
Well, I mean, here's the deal. At a certain point, if somebody killed my dad, I mean, I'm not making threats here. People are going to die. And I think America used to be like that, and so the system wouldn't act like this much. But, I mean, what is it like for you guys living so close to it? Or what's it like watching Eric Holder on TV. I mean, let's talk about Eric Holder's role in all this.
Well, of course, I wasn't aware. I mean, I knew that it was a federal operation, obviously, but I wasn't aware of Eric Holder's interest in this. And I have not done any homework on that, and really have no personal knowledge of Eric Holder's interest in the Oklahoma City bombing.
What we have, Alex, we got to cover that Jamie Gorelick, of course, her signature is on the 9/11 Commission report, and she's on the group photo on the inside jacket cover of that book. She was actually serving under the Justice Department, number 2 under Janet Reno. Eric Holder served in a lateral position at Jamie Gorelick. So you see these people rear their ugly heads, so to speak, on a judicial level. They're coming back in time and time again because they know they literally got away with murder. It was Jamie Gorelick that we found out was actually barking the marching orders out to the Oklahoma DA's office within days after the bombing, on speakerphone, yelling at the top of her lungs, telling how the DA was going to investigate this case, who they were going after, who they were going to ignore, and that was it. There was no basically.
Yeah, why do we even have courts? But well, I mean, the lawsuits that Jesse Trinidad and others have filed, they've gotten the emails from Holder where he's in control of the cover-up. And he's saying things like, this is our #1 priority in the Justice Department. This is D-Day. Cover this up. Just like Fast and Furious.
It was Kenny Trinidad's murder. And we have the internal documents. You've seen them. Jesse has sent them PDF. Internal emails from Holder's top lieutenants and his underlings, his legal assistants. Everybody was on the same page as far as how that investigation was going. And Jesse basically sent, I believe, an 8-page letter to Patrick Leahy, who was in charge of the Senate subcommittee that was in charge of the hearings, to basically approve Holder's appointment. And Leahy refused to respond to Jesse Trinidad. And the fact that he had that letter, all of the facts were laid out. It's like Jesse was completely ignored.
What about Larry Potts, the head, the deputy FBI director? He said that he was in Dallas, and then he claimed that he flew Southwest Airlines there. World Net Daily and others broke this, but it was also in some local papers, I know. And then it turned out because of storms that day, those flights didn't exist. And then the receipts came up that he was there the day before. And, of course, that's what witnesses had said they'd seen. I mean, that's a pretty big deal right there. You guys got any comments on that?
I'm reading a memo, actually, that was put out by a colleague of ours that helped us with the film early on. Danny Colson was the FBI agent. Very peculiar situation there. I got to talk to...
Okay, then how was Larry Potts tied in? Because I'm going from memory here.
This is amazing. I actually was in the archives in Austin working with Wendy Painting on looking at a lot of the defense team papers. Larry Potts was actually best friends with Eric Holder. And there's an article in the Dallas Morning News we stumbled across going through all of these boxes of papers. Eric Holder recused himself from prosecuting the Ruby Ridge case because Larry Potts was one of the chief lieutenants in there. Since they were best friends, Holder